The novel is called Lovers at the Chameleon Club, Paris, 1932. And the inspiration is a photograph by Brassai. I think you know. I'm going to write this kind of fake biography of her by a fake character who has a name and a consciousness and problems of her own that you can't stop talking about. So I'm going to read you just the first section, which is fairly short, which is it's the very beginning of the novel. It's the first of the letters of the photographer who in the novel is called Gabor, to his parents back in Hungary. And then I'm going to read you just a couple pages of the biography, just to give you a sense of what the different voices are like. Lovers at the Chameleon Club, Paris, 1932. Paris, May 14th, 1924. Dear parents, last night I visited a club in Montparnasse where the men dress as women and the women as men. How Papa would have loved it. And how Mama's face would have crinkled in that special smile she has for Papa's passion for everything French. The place is called the Chameleon Club. It's a few steps down from the street. You need a password to get in. The password is, police, open up. The customers find it amusing. A bar, a stage, a dance floor, leather banquettes, tables around the edges. A typical Paris nightclub, except for the clientele. But here's the most amazing thing. The owner is Hungarian. She calls herself Yvonne. She's tall and blonde and dresses in red and has a weakness for sailors. She sings in that husky voice Papa adores, broken and choked with tears. When she sang, I heard Papa's phonograph muffled and locked in his study. Yvonne's song was about a woman whose sailor boyfriend drowned at sea. I'd never heard a sadder song, not even from the gypsies. Yvonne sang with her eyes closed, one hand raking her hair. In her other hand, pressed to her forehead, she held an unlit cigarette. She sang, I will never see him again, never, never again. A mournful arpeggio rippled from the touchingly out-of-tune piano, while the tenor saxophone looped circles around the voice. The other musicians put down their instruments and sat back, watching Yvonne. It's over, she sang, all over. I felt clammy and chilled to the bone, though the club was smoky and hot. I reached for my camera the way as a boy I used to reach for your hands, but I'd left the Voigtlander, the one you so generously helped pay for, in my room. I was hoping to make a few friends before I asked to take pictures of bankers and diplomats whose wives might not be aware that their husbands go out dancing in high heels and dresses. To be honest, it took some getting used to, even for me, even after a year in Paris. The hardest part was not staring, or was I supposed to stare? Photographing these birds of paradise will be a challenge, don't you think? I was trying to communicate with nothing so obvious as a smile, but let's say a smile of the eyes. My admiration for the chic of women in tuxedos escorting women in evening gowns. As if these glorious peacocks cared what a penniless, unknown Hungarian artist thought of their fashion choices. As you know, as even Papa admits, the French have always had mixed feelings about anyone who hasn't lived in France since the Neanderthal age. Though here in Montparnasse, they like anything exotic. By the time Yvonne sang the second verse, everyone was in love with her. Her grief was everyone's grief. I completely forgot myself and wept along with the rest. The ocean knew where her sailor was. We've seen him, said the waves. Now he's sleeping with us, but you will never kiss his lips or feel the weight of his body again. Uncoiling from the tight knot into which the song had tied her, Yvonne stood and opened her arms to us. The audience exploded. She welcomed the crowd to her home, which she told them to think of as their home, a place where they could feel free to take off their trousers and spread their legs and relax. She said some other things in this vein, including some jokes that might have embarrassed Mama, though Papa would have taken them in the French good humor intended. I felt that Yvonne was laughing at us for having been so sad, even though she'd made us sad with her song about the dead sailor. The crowd was mostly regulars. I could tell they knew what was coming. The Chameleons' famous all-girl band struck up a jazzy fanfare, and a dozen men and women danced on stage in skimpy sailor suits. What bizarre human pretzels they made doing flips and backbends until their faces were staring forward from between their knees. Slithering over and under each other like a nest of snakes, They threw in plenty of crisp salutes and precision marching. A giantess in a Navy officer's uniform lifted a tiny Asian girl in an orange kimono who sat cross-legged like the Buddha, cupped in the giant's enormous hands and sang a lilting melody about first love and cherry blossoms. When the show ended, the dancers strolled among us, their sailor hats upturned. Believe me, I thought a million times about the sacrifices you were making, but didn't you raise me to believe that everyone should be compensated for their labor? Isn't that the first principle Papa's school teaches its students? I dropped a few coins into the cap of a sailorette who gave me a saucy smile. When she turned and winked over her shoulder, something made me wonder if the sailorette might be a sailor. How Papa must be laughing. Serves the stupid boy right. The band was playing swing tunes, a few couples started dancing, men with men, women with women, in monocles and mustaches. But if you're picturing something lewd, you couldn't be more wrong. They were as stiff as children at a grade school dance. Leaning against the wall, Yvonne watched, smoking a cigarette. Yvonne caught the eye of the head waiter, a woman in black trousers and a butcher's apron, Fat Bernard, who also sings. Without a word being spoken, waiters swarmed the room. Soon they were practically sprinting with wrapped trays of bottles and glasses. The sailors and sailorettes pitched in. The music got louder. The customers shouted to be heard. Dancers drifted onto the floor. One couple did the tango that the band was playing a foxtrot. Sweeter than sweet crooned Fat Bernard in a syrupy tenor. Lovers kissed. An argument broke out when a dancer grabbed a brandy from a tray headed for someone's table. I took advantage of the chaos to approach Yvonne. It was too noisy to talk. I pantomimed, taking her picture. I shouted, "I want to take your picture." At first she couldn't hear me, but her expression changed when she realized that I was speaking Hungarian. You know how we love our language, how those Asiatic vowels whisk us back to the powdered heaven where Mama sang us to sleep. Ask us anything in our mother tongue, and we will say yes. Yvonne stared, then told me to do something to myself that Mama shouldn't imagine. Her refusal was doubly surprising. From my letters, you must have concluded that Parisians like having their pictures taken, especially French girls. Why not? I yelled over the music. My voice squeaked like a boy's. Yvonne grabbed my elbow and dragged me over to a door she unlocked with a key that clanked from her spangled belt. Don't worry, dear parents. You can read on. I know you want to hear about all my adventures, but you have raised me too well to risk upsetting Mama, though Papa might enjoy my account of a spicy interlude. I swear my only desire was to photograph Yvonne and her clientele. My pursuit of her, my request to her, was entirely about my art, the basis of your faith in me and your generous stipend, the tuition you are paying to what Papa calls the art school of life, which will soon decide if I have what it takes to be an artist. All the time Yvonne sang, I'd watched waves break behind her eyes. I wondered if the surf would still be visible when her image came up in my developing tray. Relaxed ears, I'm only joking. If from time to time I sound excessively, should I say, arty, don't worry that your son has been driven mad by insomnia, hunger, poverty, and so forth. Yvonne was right to say no. I would never have had the nerve to order a woman like that around for as long as it took to set up a shop in the office that looked more like a courtesan's nest in one of Papa's Balzac novels. The cushions, the lacy things tossed on the couch, the tangles of stockings and sandals exuded a flowery perfume, Yvonne's trademark gardenia. Yvonne pointed at a table on which there was a terrarium. The glass walls were beaded with moisture. Inside, a miniature garden bloomed with tiny topiary and classical Greek statues. Versailles, I said, what a coincidence. I photographed there last week. Yvonne said, are you blind? Mama, Papa, you know better than anyone what a visual person I am, how I learned my colors before any child in our town, how I could always find the potato bugs in Mama's garden and be the first to spot Papa trundling home after his long day at school. So you will understand how embarrassed I was by how long it took me to see the green chameleon standing perfectly still behind the thimble-sized statue of Cupid shooting his bow and arrow. This is why, as I keep telling you, I have fallen in love with this city. Despite the worries, despite my guilt for delaying Papa's retirement, despite the soul-destroying jobs I must take in order to make ends meet, it still makes me dizzy with joy to see the word Paris in my handwriting at the top of this letter. Where else can one go to a cross-dressers nightclub and meet a Hungarian chanteuse who keeps a pet lizard in the style of Marie Antoinette? I don't advise anyone to write a book like this. I mean, because it's really a pain. And it's 500 pages long, the draft I have, which I'm working on. And because of these, because it takes place over 20 years, and because there are all these different narratives, and because my memory is failing, I know, I just forget what happened. I can go back and say, oh no, I already told you, the reader, that this happened, and now it seems something else. Or, a character, a sort of minor character has one eye, appears, and then 40 pages later there's a newspaper photo of him in which he appears to have 2 eyes. So I think about, stuff like that's still happening to me. Yeah, and this is, I'm on I don't know, I can't, you don't count anymore, but probably the 40th draft. I'd say the 40th. I've been working on it for 4 years, so. Questions?
I have a question, Francine. I'm curious how much research you did on the Versailles, just because it seems like just in the 2 sections that you read, it's like fake biography and then fake biography, and so that's interesting to me. And then when you're saying you're having memory problems too, I think that's perfect for a fake biography, right? Yeah.
Well, my mind is just like a big colander now. It's just drain the spaghetti and all the water drips out. So I have shelves of books in my study about the period, and I will say, I looked at a lot of Versailles photographs, and part of what I was doing too was trying to write about his work because he's a huge favorite of mine. And reading about the period, I do, even though I've said it's not a historical novel, and so I didn't want to make any obvious, ridiculous mistakes. So even at this point, I'm going to find some willing graduate student in French history that I can send it to and pay her to read it, him or her to read it, just to make sure. But so I had some sense of. When the invasion was, when certain governments happened, when the right or the left took over, and also, there was this real bar in Paris that actually made it through the war, most of the war, when the Germans came in and shut down everything. But it became this kind of tourist attraction for German soldiers to look at how decadent and vile the French were. So there, there was stuff I found out, and the place where Versailles photographed was this actual bar. So there was some research, but it was wasted on me.
Sorry, how long did you say you've been working on this?
4 years. 4 long years. And when I say working, I don't know what other people do. I really don't. But working is working. We had we had a sort of strange summer, but we had this. It was a long story, but I got this job teaching in Florence for in Italy for. I was teaching for 4 hours a week, so nothing. They gave us this apartment with great air conditioning, and then it was 95. It was 95 degrees every day, or above. So, and my husband and I would just stop leaving the apartment. So we spent like a month in an apartment in Florence, and there was no TV really. I could watch Law and Order in English with Italian subtitles, which was great. My Italian got really good from that, but there were no distractions. It was like being an intern. So, and I just wrote it, I got a ton of work done. So when I say work, at best, I was, I couldn't do this with the first draft, but I certainly could by the 30th draft. I was working like 8-10-hour days. Yeah.
Are you close to being done?
I don't know. I don't know. I think so. Yes, in the sense that it's there. It's all there. I know what happens, kind of. But now it's really fun. And also, because I kind of feel like I kind of broke it open when I was working in Florence, the one thing I did, and this will probably sound ridiculous to you, is I've kind of realized what happens in the novel in the simplest way. So now if I want to put something in, I know where to put it. And also there are little things that happen. I'm trying to remember, there's something I just put in. There's something, he takes a photograph of something. I can't remember what it is. Takes a photograph of something, and then he obviously has gotten this letter from his mother and his father. And the mother's extremely superstitious. And the mother says, you should never have taken that photograph. It's extremely bad luck. And then later, and this wasn't in any draft until just the last one. And then later, I thought, oh, and then I'll just go near the end, and sure enough, that bad luck happens. You know, so you can do stuff like that. But you know, I mean, for those of you who read Blue Angel, you might think that it's written chronologically, but you know, the one thing I knew sort of about halfway through was that about 3/4 of the way through that I wanted like a really disastrous sex scene, like really bad sex scene. But I didn't know what was going to sink it, so to speak. And then I thought, oh, the guy breaks a tooth in the middle of it. But so you would think, reading it that was there all the way along. But once I realized that, then I went back and kind of seeded this bad tooth all the way through and just gave it to him so that when he broke it, it wasn't like from out of nowhere. I mean, it was this, you know, it was like, I should get it fixed, I should get it fixed. He doesn't get it fixed, and then it breaks. So, you know, and in a way, you know, people imagine that writing is chronological, or the drafts, or I don't know what they think. But anyway, you know, you work on it, I mean, in that way. So I don't know. I mean, it's due in April. I do know that. And I plan to hold on to it every second until then. So, you know, the day, I think it's due April 13th, bad luck. But, you know, so I'll end it in April 12th, better luck.
When did you get to a point in your career, or just as a writer, where you could sit down and write for like 8 hours, 10 hours a day?
When did I get a point where I'm not there? I mean, I was then, you know, because I was in prison, basically. But here I am, you know. Today I'm not going to write 10 hours. I mean, it was helpful, you know, when I wrote a lot when my kids were small, and I knew that the school bus came. I started working. The school bus came back. I stopped working, so that was very good for, you know, just. But I work every time. I work whenever I can. But I can't, you know, I don't. I have jobs, you know, I have other jobs, and I'm constantly writing. It's glorifying to call it journalism because it's not that. You know, pieces sometimes for money, mostly because someone guilt trips me for some reason. You know, I mean, like I got an email from the Toronto Globe and Mail, and they were like, oh, would you write a review of Alice Munro's new book of short stories? And we'll pay you like 15 cents, 1,000 words. And I went, oh, Alice Munro, she's a hero, Toronto's her city, I'd be happy to do it. 15 cents, sure. So now, you know, so that's what I'm doing. So I can't work on my novel when I'm doing that. Yeah.
With as many, I mean, to me at least, 40 drafts seems like an astronomical number.
It is.
How are you able, with as many drafts as that, how are you able to maintain an objectivity or even just like an interest in seeing the same chapters over and over and over again and rewriting and changing? How are you able to like maintain interest in that?
It's hard. The last draft, I mean, and it varies from draft to draft because it depends what you're doing. The last draft, I was just kind of cleaning it up just to see where, you know, and finding things like mistakes, simple mistakes, word repetition. And I was saying like, oh, this is so boring, I can't stand it anymore, I can't bear it. And then somehow the next draft, or the one I'm doing now, doesn't seem so boring. I mean, you know, for one thing, and here's where it helps to have no memory. You go back after a while, you've never seen it before. It's pretty good. I wonder who wrote it. So it's like working on someone else's book. But it's, you know, then there's some related question which people ask, which is like, how do you know when you're done? You know, well, there are two ways. One is you're just obviously messing it up. You know, every change you make is worse. You know, and that's hard to tell too, but you have a sense of it. And then, I don't know, I used to get asked that question, and I realized a while ago, I have two computers. One's for reasons of personal paranoia, not hooked up to the internet, and mine is. And they're right next to each other. So, you know. So I was working on something. It wasn't this. It was something, a nonfiction book, I think. And I realized that I was watching TV on my laptop and finishing the book on the desktop. And I thought, you know what? If you're watching TV when you're writing, that's a sign of it. So if that you find that happening, you're done. Yeah.
How do you start something so big like this book?
Well, you know, everybody's different. Some people, writers, I interview them, have outlines. They have outlines. They know what they're going to do. I just started writing the first letter. That much I knew. I knew that I wanted his voice to be in the form of letters, and that was all I knew. And then I just started writing the first letter, and as I was writing it, the thing is, it's like, you know, not who's there. As I was writing it, 3 other characters, the club owner and the parents, came to me. And then when I started writing the biography, then like 5 other characters came through that. And then by the time I did the Henry Miller novel, another 5. So already I had 20 characters and I had to do something with them. So, but I don't, I know other people have ideas, they have outlines, they have this, that. I don't. I just start. And I think, for me, that's the only way I can